Rob, I want to hear all about your brand new toy. I saw on Mastodon that something was delivered to your house not long ago.
Oh yeah, well, the fun thing that I didn't particularly mention was that this is a work purchase,
Okay.
and I had six of these turning up at my house for me and 5 other people.
Oh, that's a big. That's a lot of value of stuff coming to your house.
Oh yeah, and the driver sort of bumbled up the driveway and with this sort of like a plastic crate with them in.
Wow.
They're fairly heavy machines. These are we haven't actually said what they were. 16-inch M2 MacBook Pros.
Wow.
So they're fairly hefty, and then you add in the charger and the box and all of that. Like this was a fairly hefty delivery.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. So what chip did you get in there?
I got the, we even spoke about this before and I forgot, so I'm going to open this up. So I got the M2 Max in this with nice. 64 gig of RAM.
That's very nice.
And this is coming from a 2020 MacBook Pro 16-inch, and that was, I think it was an Intel i9.
Okay, so that was like the last rev of the Mac Pro on Intel, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it was whatever the sort of mid to top end version of that was, and I'll be honest, like I jumped back to it to grab some files that I'd left on it. Mm-hmm. It feels terrible. Like I just want to put it in the bin. I mean, it's like 2 weeks ago I was like, yeah, my computer's fine, and now I'm just like, this is the worst computer I've ever used. I never want to touch it again.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, were you worried at all that some of like your developer tools and things might not work on Apple Silicon yet?
They don't, and me and a colleague have been trying to fix that today. We'll get there. We knew this was going to be a problem.
Yep. I asked because I know from talking to Alex Guillot, who does our development work, that he's been working on an Intel-based MacBook Pro for that very reason, because he was concerned about some of the Kubernetes stuff he does and Docker and all these other things, and whether his setups would work on Apple Silicon. But I think he's worked through most of it. I don't know. He hasn't replaced his laptop yet, but he does have an M2 Mac Mini, and I think he's got most of the Mac Story stuff running on that now.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm, because that's actually what we've had to switch to, is Docker for our local development, and that's all working fine. There's just a few bits specific to us that we can't quite get working, but we'll work it out. What I'm more excited about is I don't have a touch bar anymore. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I never used it. With the one exception of the picture-in-picture button in Safari on the touch bar. That was the only time I used it. I assume there's an extension or something I can get to replace that.
I'm sure there is. Yeah, there are.
Which I need to have a look around.
There's Pipifier. Pipifier is one of the ones that I've used before. That works quite well.
That's perfect. That'll do. I knew there had to be one.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there are others too. I mean, it's just I think it's a pretty simple extension, but that's interesting. Well, I mean, I had a touch bar Mac way back in the day, and I've like put that out of my head. Like it's such a bad memory because it was one of the bad butterfly keyboard Macs too, and it was the worst Mac I had ever owned. It was, God, I'm trying to remember now, maybe like a 2018 MacBook Pro 13-inch, if I remember right. And I had problems with it, just endless problems with it. And eventually the M1 MacBook Air really kind of saved me, because not only was it a lot faster, even though it's the lowest model in the lineup, it is completely silent and cool too, which I really like.
Yeah, that will be something I don't think it's ever shown on our recordings. It might have done. I edit the show. I don't actually, intently listen.
Right.
But my old MacBook would, at this point in a recording, we're 5 minutes in, we've maybe been on a call for 15. My old MacBook, the fans would have been going. It would have been boiling hot.
Yep.
And it's it's pretty warm here at the moment. Like we're sort of in a sort of mini sort of heat wave. Beginning of the summer.
Yeah. This
M2 MacBook Pro is cold to the touch.
Yep.
No fans, no noise. There's as I said, there's 6 of us all using these at work now. none of us have heard the fan yet. So yeah, it is. I know this is sort of like 2 years later. It's me going, "Oh, aren't the M chips really good?" But it's genuinely amazing what they've been able to do with these.
Oh yeah, and the heat and the noise are real. I mean, I know I have a 2018 Mac Mini, which is a pretty high end one, and right now, as we talk, I am downloading 1.78 terabytes of video, which is when we were at WWDC, Apple recorded me and Federico doing some interviews for App Stories, and they had, I mean, their podcast studio, not only was it for recording audio, but they had 3 television studio style cameras from 3 different angles, all recording simultaneously in 4K ProRes. And so, I mean, we didn't actually end up using the files and putting them up on YouTube or anything. I mean, Mac Stories doesn't even have a YouTube account, which is kind of funny when you can think about it. But we're really with the times. I wanted to preserve that stuff because it's on like frame.io or something, and I was wondering whether, I don't know how long Apple's going to leave it up there. So I'm downloading it, and that download is really making this machine hot. I had to open up it's sitting in a closet as a little, a Mac server. And I went into the closet like a half hour ago, and it was really warm in there. So I opened the door and trying to give it a little more ventilation while it's doing this big, download, and then writing the file to a slow external old fashioned hard drive, which hard drives themselves can create a fair amount of heat too, depending on what model you have. And so, yeah, I've got this closet full of little heat makers in that really I'm so glad not to have in my office anymore. Because last summer when we were in the apartment, I had all that stuff on a bookshelf next to where I worked, and the room constantly got hot, and that was part of it. I mean, not only was it summertime, but it was also just those things running all day, warming up the room little by little throughout the day, and now all I've got is this Mac Studio, which is incredibly cool all the time.
Yeah, it really, when I got my previous laptop, I think it had been 3 years. My laptop prior to that was about 3 years old, I think, and the jump from those two it didn't feel like anything really. It's like, it's like a nice new computer and it's a bit faster, but this is just something else. Like everything is so fast, and it's like, okay, everything just opens really quick, and even stuff like building iOS apps just builds. Like I'm not going, let me start that and go and do something else. Like it just kind of happens in a reasonable amount of time.
Right. No, it's definitely true. I've definitely noticed that myself. I've been thinking about going with the M2 Air at some point. I haven't decided whether to do that yet, but and one of the reasons I've been interested in it is the game porting toolkit, which I want to try out, which you and I were talking about a little bit before we started. And I think you've got a Mac that probably will do very well with that, because it's a toolkit that's meant for game developers to allow them to quickly determine how compatible their games are with Apple Silicon. And so it's essentially in an emulation environment, so you can play a Windows game with DirectX 12 support on a Mac, on an Apple Silicon Mac, and kind of see where are your frame rates dropping and all that sort of thing. And so it's not really meant for like you or I to play video games. Now we could, but it's a tool to give them a better idea of how well their game works. And I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see. I mean, a lot of people have been experimenting with it. It sounds like, especially the M2, runs a lot of these games pretty well.
Yeah, it's. I'm definitely going to try it out with something. I don't know what yet. I'll just jump on my Steam account. I'm sure I've got something I can try it on. GTA 5 is probably a good example. That's one people have pulled over.
Yeah, I've seen some examples of GTA 5, which looks quite good. I think Cyberpunk runs a little rough, but Cyberpunk runs rough on just about everything, honestly. I mean, even unless you got a really top end gaming PC.
I'm not sure Cyberpunk is the bar to be setting for this, but yeah, I get your point. Like, it's a fairly intensive game,
right?
People have got Diablo 4 running. So yeah, it's on my list to try this out, because I'm curious about it. I mean, I've got a PS5. Generally that's where I play my games, having said that, there was a game that we spoke about. Is it Hi-Fi Rush that I really wanted to play?
Yep.
So I can maybe look into that. But it's certainly interesting to see something that doesn't appear to be like a half-assed effort from Apple in gaming. Like this seems like a legitimate effort to improve gaming on the Mac.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I'm a little skeptical only because I've been burned so many times hoping that Apple would do something great with gaming, and they really haven't. But I think that they're trying, and I'm not sure that they really care a lot about the AAA market. I mean, the reality is the AAA market. I just was reading one of these analyst reports the other day that said that the kind of that gaming market is something like 28% of gaming in general, and that casual games, and I forget what they call them, mobile and casual games, made up something like 75+% of the gaming market, and that's where Apple's done really well with Apple Arcade and everything on the App Store as well. So maybe their heart's not really in it, but they did announce at WWDC that Death Stranding is coming, which is a fairly current game. I mean, it's been out for a couple of years now, but it's still a fairly current game, as well as Stray, which just came out last year. I believe it was last summer, right? Yeah, which is an indie game and a little smaller and maybe not quite as taxing as some of those other AAA games, but still a very good game, a well-regarded game. No Man's Sky has come out on Steam, which was a little weird because a year ago at WWDC 2022, Apple announced that it was coming to the Mac and to the iPad. No new word on the iPad yet, and on the Mac, it's only on Steam. And I'm not sure, it's a weird thing for Apple to kind of announce a game that's coming to the Mac and then it be on Steam as opposed to their own store. But, that's probably maybe that's a Hello Games issue. I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a
30% issue.
Yeah. I don't know what you mean, John. No, that's for marketing. Anyway.
Yep.
Speaking of games, and you mentioned casual mobile games, and I don't normally do this because you know me to be a person who does not play games on my phone.
Yeah.
But I have a recommendation for you, a pick, nice. If you will. I don't want to steal anyone else's nomenclature for sections.
What's your pick?
So my pick is Arcadia. And this is a pack of, 15 games or something like that. Little retro games. And a podcast I listen to, Hemispheric Views. Mm-hmm. And I know the host listens, so hi guys. They run Arcadia June this month, and have done the last couple of years, where all their people in their Discord and stuff like that try and get high scores, and they use this game, Arcadia, and it has like a bunch. It has like a sort of breakout equivalent. Mm-hmm. It's got a bunch of little mini racing games. There's one of those bubble ones that you see everywhere, where you point the bubbles and if you get 3 they pop away and stuff like that.
Sure.
The bubble one particularly, I keep getting caught up in that quite a lot. I think the other night I was playing one game of it for like half an hour.
Oh my gosh.
So
that sounds
I thought
really
I'd bring
good,
that up because I think it's like, I don't know, $1, $2, something like that on the App Store.
That sounds really good.
I figured I'd bring it up because I don't think, we've been doing this, 7-8 years maybe. I don't think I've ever recommended a game, or at least not an iOS game. So it's always a first for everything.
No, that's good. I mean, that sounds like the perfect kind of game for on an iPhone. I haven't been playing a lot of iPhone games recently. I did play Leia's Horizon by Snowman, which I reviewed on Mac Stories a couple of months ago. And that's a very good game, too. Very nice, unique gameplay in kind of a 3D open world, kind of modified to work well on mobile, which is kind of a hard thing when you think about it, because open world games, you're right, they're not really typically the kind of game that you drop in and out of for short periods of time. But they kind of solved that by making the open world not a huge open world, and also They have a lot of little quests. It's basically very much a quest-driven game where you can wander around and just explore, but there's also the quests, which are really well done for short mobile sessions. We today, Rob, we also had a Nintendo Direct, which I guess you didn't get a chance to watch.
I didn't get a chance to watch, and I did not know about it until 20 minutes ago when you mentioned it.
Well,
so, what have we got? Any good games coming?
Yeah, it wasn't announced until yesterday, I believe, or maybe it was Monday. And so it started at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and it was better than I expected. I mean, there was an update on Pikmin 4. There are high-res updates to Pikmin 1 and 2 coming on the Switch as of today. Pikmin 4 doesn't really interest me that much, but it's a much deeper game than I expected. Has some elements that reminded me of Tears of the Kingdom, where you have like a above-ground world and a below-ground world and that sort of thing. There is Super Mario RPG is being remade and coming out. Yes, it is coming out, I think, later this year. Don't quote me on that one because I'm not entirely sure. But Super Mario RPG is getting a remake, and it looks really nice. So it's coming out November 17th, that one. So a lot of this stuff that they announced today is not coming out for a while, other than the Pikmin 1 and 2. But it was surprisingly good. Another thing that's coming is something called Super Mario Wonder, which is a brand new 2D Mario game, side-scroller Mario game, which is coming later this year too, which I was really surprised to see. Yeah, that's another big game. There's a WarioWare game coming called Move It, where all the little mini games. Yeah, all the mini games are based on like a little bit like they're exercise games where you have to kind of stand with the Joy-Con and your individual ones in your hand and do different poses or movements and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, not super thrilled with it, but it looks kind of cool. The let's see, the Scarlet and Violet DLC. There's a little bit of an update on that, but not really much in terms of new visuals, so not much to report there. Detective Pikachu is coming back, and Detective Pikachu Returns, if spin-off Pikachu games are your thing. And the Metal Gear Solid Collection, which has been announced on other platforms, is coming to the Switch as well.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So it was actually that Super Mario RPG remake that's exciting to me.
Yeah, that was pretty much the big game. Oh, there's a Luigi. The Luigi game from the 3DS, the Luigi's Mansion game, is coming too.
Oh, very nice.
that one was more like, and there's this thing coming too. It was really it was really weird. There wasn't much information on that one at all, but it looked pretty cool. So and there's a Sonic game, I guess, Sonic Superstars. So those are the big. No, I know. Those are the big ones, I guess. I mean, I think the really ones that I'm excited about are Super Mario RPG, Super Mario Wonder, and I guess that's about it. The Luigi game, although there's not a lot mentioned there. They haven't really said when that's. I guess it's coming this year, but they didn't really say much about it. Of course, they're still releasing Mario Kart 8 tracks. It's been, like, I don't know, 3 years later or whatever it's been. This Metal Gear Solid is coming out on October 24th.
Okay, so they actually, a lot of sort of remakes and rehashes there, but like, they're digging into the archives. Like Super Mario RPG, that's a big one. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, they really didn't. Have you ever played Vampire Survivors? Because that's coming as well.
I have not. No.
Yeah,
I have played Super Mario RPG, so that's the original one.
Yeah. Vampire Survivors is coming, and there's going to be a co-op mode where up to 4 people can play at the same time. So I think it's I don't know. It was 40 minutes and a lot longer and more involved than I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm. And look at that, and we've got it in. You did that in like 3 minutes. An amazing rundown.
Yes, yes. Now you don't have to watch the 40 minutes. I started halfway through because I forgot it was coming on, and I saw most of it, but I missed the first part, and then I went back and just did kind of recap articles from places like The Verge and everywhere.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I will say, I don't know if anybody can hear this in the recording, but I can hear a very cryy baby.
So I cannot. So hopefully no one else can either.
No. Well, let's on that note, let's wrap it up.
Sounds good.
I will go and assist and see if there's anything to be done, or if it's just babies crying, because that's what they do.
They just do that sometimes. Yeah. All right.
Cool. And we'll be back a couple of weeks. We're gonna we'll speak to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.